Hi, thanks for joining us today for our 5-minute Bible study. We are going to continue in the book of Colossians. We are in chapter 1, and we're going to look at verse 17 today. As always, context is king, so go ahead and take a look at the verses before and after. Specifically, look in verse 15 through 20. That'll give you an idea of what we're reading about here today when we look at verse 17. So, verse 17 says this: He is before all things, and in him all things hold together. So short verse, but powerful verse. He is before all things. So what does Paul mean by that? Well, when we look at the Greek behind that word before, it could either mean before or above. So in the context of what we're reading here, it makes most sense, and most scholars agree, that it means before. So we'll look at above first, just in case. And what he's saying, if he's saying above, and I really actually believe he means both. But if he's saying above, he's saying that Jesus is preeminent. This is what he meant when he said firstborn of all creation back a couple of verses ago. He is above all things. He is foremost. He is preeminent. He is in charge. He is on top. So he repeats that here, if indeed we take it to mean above. However, most scholars recognize that it actually means before. Again, I think Paul's using the word very cleverly, and he means both. But as we look at it to mean before, what he's saying is that he is before all things. In other words, before all things were created. Remember, in the verse previous, we saw that Jesus created all things. So now he's before all things. And because he's the creator, he is before it. If Jesus is before all things, he's before time, he's before space, he's before life, he's before the universe. Before all things means all things. So in other words, before anything was ever created, Jesus was. It's speaking to him being eternal. Jesus is eternal. And therefore, we recognize in the Jewish mind especially that to be eternal is to be God. That only God is eternal. So Paul is basically telling us Jesus is God because he is the eternal creator of all things. He was before all things. He created all things. That makes him God. And that's what Paul is pointing out here about Jesus here. So then the next part of the verse says, and in him all things hold together. And what does Paul mean by that? Well, it basically means that not only did he create all things, but he holds all things together. And so we recognize that there are physical laws in the universe. We recognize that the laws of physics are the things that we can depend on. We know gravity is because of the law of gravity. And if there wasn't a law of gravity, we'd all be floating in space. Planets would separate from the sun. Things would go crazy. We need that law of gravity for things to work the way they do. The question isn't that whether there's a law of gravity. The question is, why is there a law of gravity? Who made that law of gravity? Why doesn't the law of gravity ever change? Why is it today one thing and tomorrow not something completely different? What is it that makes the laws of physics, including the law of gravity, stay constant, stay the same today as it was yesterday and will be tomorrow? How can we have that confidence? Well, it's because there's a force behind the physical forces. All the physical laws that we learn about and that we know about and that we study, all those laws, there's something behind those laws, and Paul tells us what that is. It's Jesus. Jesus holds all the laws of the universe together, and he sustains it. In other words, at any point, the God who created the universe can remove his hand from the universe and all things would fall apart, would break up, would burn up, would be destroyed. And so we see that the reason that hasn't happened yet is because Jesus has his hands upon the universe and he sustains it. He keeps it going exactly how it is today. It will always be until the day that he decides that it wants to change. And we read about that in other parts of the Bible where we read about the end times and that the earth and the heavens coming to a complete end, burning, whatever they may do to be destroyed completely, and a new heaven and new earth will be created at that point. But we see, why doesn't that happen today? Because until Jesus determines that he's going to remove his hand and stop sustaining the universe, we continue on as we are. So there we see what Paul's telling us about Jesus. He is the creator. He is the eternal creator, and he's the eternal creator that sustains and maintains the universe. That is who Paul recognizes that Jesus is. So thank you for joining us today. It was great to have you with me. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments below, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thank you so much for being with me. God bless you. Have a wonderful day.